Home Secretary, Mr. Putin's called for talks on Ukraine. What are the chances of that actually happening this week, do you think?
Well, we need a serious response from Russia. They started this illegal invasion of Ukraine, and everyone wants to see peace in Ukraine. And now we've had the huge international pressure calling for a ceasefire. We do need to now see a serious response from the Russian regime. That so far has been lacking. I hope that they will now take this seriously.
OK. Now, I understand that we're also going to see some new proposals on immigration from you this week. We know that you want to reduce migration. Is this white paper going to include a target for net migration?
Well, it's a plan to restore control and order to the immigration system and to bring net migration substantially down after really the Conservatives completely lost control of immigration. It quadrupled in the space of just 4 years. But the Conservatives did set out multiple targets, broken promises. All of them were broken. So we're not going to do that. We're not going to take that really failed approach, because I think what we need to do is rebuild credibility and trust in the whole system. So we'll set out practical steps. We'll set out the impact that they will have, but we're not going to take the approach the Conservatives took because it failed.
Well, we'll come to some of the issues, the steps. But your colleague, the Chancellor, has to have a planning number. And she's been working on the planning number of net migration of 340,000 a year. Is it correct that your department, Home Office, is now working for a higher number of over 500,000, which was the high prediction from the ONS?
No, and those are just a forecast that are done by the ONS. And there's a huge set of problems with all of those forecasts. Our view is, and there has been historically, you've seen the way in which they've been continually revised. But look, our view is that net migration needs to come substantially down. So,
OK, it's going to be less than 500,000.
No, it needs to come down. It needs to come down significantly more than that. We need to see a substantial reduction in net migration. But what we also need to do is see stronger controls in place and also changes in the way that the immigration system works. So, for example, we've had a big...
I promise you I want to get onto system, but just to get clear, the politics of this. You want to bring it down from 500,000? Do you want to get it down below the Chancellor, the ONS OBR estimate of 340,000? What would you feel comfortable with? What sort of number?
So I understand the questions that you're asking, and effectively you're asking for the kind of thing that the Conservatives did repeatedly, which is they set numbers and then actually there was no credibility to any of them and they didn't deliver. So we're not going to take that approach. So I understand what you're saying.
You're not even going to give me an order of number?
No. What we're going to do, however, we are very clear. We need to bring net migration substantially down. It is currently falling, but we need to go much further. That's what the plan is about. It's about restoring control and order. It's about preventing this chaotic system where we had overseas recruitment soar while training in the UK was cut, and we saw low-skilled migration in particular hugely go up at the same time as UK residents in work or in training fell. That is a broken system, so that is what we need to change.
All right, let's talk about some of the sharp end of this. You want to send foreign criminals back where they came from. What happens if the country where they came from, let's say the Nigerians or the Italians, say, we're not having them back? What are you going to do?
So what we need to do is increase the removals and returns, which is what we're already doing. So we've already had a 16%...
But where are you going to remove them to?
I'll come to your points. The 16% increase in the returns of foreign national offenders since the election, already as a result of what we're doing. You're right that there can be international barriers and there can be international problems, but that's not the only issue. So where we have those international issues, then we engage repeatedly, persistently, in a determined way, because we do think that people should return home if they break our laws. But what we also need to do is to make sure that a wider range of people are actually being returned in the first place, because at the moment, the Home Office only takes action on the cases that have been into the prison system, including cases that have been in prison for more than a year. Actually, there are a lot of other people who are committing repeated offences that the Home Office isn't even notified about. So we need to change those rules, because if you come to the UK, you should abide by the law.
Yeah, but let's stick with the ones that people most worry about. People who've committed crimes, who in some cases, are dangerous. Now, there's been a responsibility on the Home Secretary since 2007. It was a Labour piece of legislation to return foreign prisoners, but you couldn't get them out of the country. I think last year it was estimated by the House of Lords Library that 3 prisons were dedicated essentially to foreign prisoners. You couldn't get them out of the country. Now, what is it that you're going to bring forward that will achieve what every Home Secretary for the last 18 years has failed to do? What's new?
So, firstly, we are already increasing returns of foreign criminals. A 16% increase just in the 8 or 9 months since the election. That is a significant increase.
But a few thousand. I think you've got 14,000, 15,000?
Indeed, but it's a significant increase since the election, so I don't think anyone can doubt our intent and our determination on this. You're right, there are obstacles and challenges that you have to continually be determined about focusing on, but what we can also do is say that, if somebody has arrived on a visa and then within a few months is committing a series of different crimes, at the moment, they may not even be picked up by the system. My view is, in those circumstances, we should be taking stronger action. So we're going to broaden the number of cases. So we're going to set out new procedures. We'll set out more information on this later in the year. We're going to set out new procedures and develop new procedures to make sure that the Home Office is actually notified when crimes are committed that aren't custodial sentences. At the moment, the Home Office doesn't even know.
I thought we were going to hear the new plans this week. I mean, we're going to wait for
So
months.
let me tell you some of the things that we're setting out this week. So we're going to introduce new restrictions on lower-skilled workers, so new visa controls, because we think actually what we should be doing is concentrating on the higher-skilled migration, and we should be concentrating on training in the UK.
Yeah.
New requirements to train here in the UK to make sure that the UK workforce benefits, and also we will be closing the care worker visa for overseas recruitment.
I want to come
as well.
to the labour market issues, but let's just deal with the things that I think are in people's minds. Number of channel crossings by small boat hit 10,000 earlier this year than ever before. We know that people are crossing, and I can tell you that because Sky journalists have been out there this morning and seen the border patrol boats heading to intercept crossings. When do you expect to see those numbers fall?
So the gangs have obviously been in place. They've had 6 years in place. We are now bringing in new laws that will come into force later this year, including giving our new Border Security Command new counter-terror powers to be able to go after the gangs. We also have new agreements now in place with France, and this is particularly important because France have now agreed they are going to take prevention action in French waters to stop boats. They've never agreed to do that.
So when these boats, as we've seen, our people have shown this, they come off the beaches. Are the French police going to get out there in their patrol boats and stop those boats getting into international waters? So is that what they've promised you? France
have now agreed they're going to intervene in French waters. They've never done that before, and previous governments haven't managed to get that agreement in place. There is a thing now, they call it taxi boats, where what happens is the boat comes along with hardly anybody in it, launches much further up the coast, comes along, people wait in the water, and then everybody crowds onto the boat in the water, and because they are in the water, even in shallow waters, the French rules have said the French police can't intervene. Now, clearly, that doesn't make any sense at all. The French Interior Minister agrees with me. That doesn't make any sense at all. So they've changed their rules in French cabinet. They're now going to take action in the water, and they've committed to doing that and to starting work on that.
Are you actually confident about this? Because we saw, literally, Sky reporters stood on the beach, saw people doing exactly what you've just described, and the French police standing on the beach going...
Yeah, and that's the rules that they've had in place.
How do you know... they could have done that before. Why couldn't they do that before?
Yeah, because the rules that they had in force, the legal framework that the French police were operating under prevented them doing it. It makes absolutely no sense. So they have now agreed, that's as a result of the work that I've been doing with the French Interior Minister. They've agreed to change that, and they're working through that at the moment. They've changed their rules in cabinet. I welcome that. But we need that much stronger enforcement.
Okay.
Also, of course, it's about increasing returns. Overall, failed asylum seekers, we've increased the returns by more than 20%, and that's 24,000 people overall being returned since the general election.
Let's deal with a couple of other sources of migration. You want to climb down on family reunion routes. We gave about 20,000 visas to people from the Indian subcontinent for family-related reasons. What are we going to do about that? Does that mean no more brides and grooms from the subcontinent?
We'll set out more in the white paper tomorrow about family rules.
But do you want to reduce that number?
About the family rules. What we need to make sure is that we've got proper standards and systems in place. Of course, people have fall in love across the world and have partners from other countries. So, of course, there always have to be systems in place for families to come back together and to be able to live together. But we also need to make sure that those rules are proper, that there is a clear framework in place, and that it can't be subject to misuse, and also that there are proper expectations as well on people about income, about language and so on if you are coming to the UK. We'll set more details out about that tomorrow.
The big source of illegal immigration actually is people who come in on work and study visas and they overstay. Now, you've got a returns programme. You've already told me that you've done... In fact, we discussed this before. You've done quite a lot of returns, but the numbers run into hundreds of thousands. How are you going to get people who have overstayed their visas? First, how are you going to find them? And secondly, are you going to drag them onto planes? I mean, what are you actually going to do? What is the big idea that's going to cut those hundreds of thousands to less than hundreds of thousands?
So we're doing a major digital overhaul now with the introduction of e-visas. It's effectively like a digital ID now for all overseas citizens. It will set out whether people have a right to work or not. That means we've then got much clearer systems in place to be able to track whether people have actually returned at the point that they should have done at the end of their visa or not, to be able to then take follow-up action, and also new equipment for the big increase in illegal working raids that we've also done. That's been about a 40% increase in illegal working raids since the election. Part of a whole approach that we're taking across the board to make sure that the rules are being respected and enforced. You're right, the system that we inherited really was broken, but we are turning that round step by step.
All the things you've told me, though they may all be individually worthy, feel like they're going to make a relatively small difference. I mean, thousands, when we're talking actually now about hundreds of thousands. You want to bring the numbers down by, I know you won't give me a number, but from what you said, at least 250,000, maybe 300,000. This doesn't add up to 300,000.
Well, so the biggest increase in net migration over the last 4 years, that 4-year period where it quadrupled, the biggest increase was work and study visas. Yep. So what we are saying already is here's some new controls we're going to introduce on the skilled worker visa, for example, and the care worker visa.
What the Conservatives
The care worker
actually.
visa... Well, no, we're going much further than that. So they belatedly reversed a small number of the changes that they'd made because, look, they were responsible for this massive increase.
All right.
So we're introducing a much tighter rules. So if you are doing less than a graduate job, then actually you won't be included under the skilled worker visa unless it's for a temporary shortage occupation. Then there will be new workforce strategies, new requirements to train here in the UK. Those changes, the combination of just those low-skilled visa changes and also the care worker changes, together, that is a reduction of probably in the region of up to 50,000 low-skilled worker visas, a reduction in the course of this year alone.
Forgive me, the only reason I'm hurrying out is I want to ask you about the trade deal that the Prime Minister was trumpeting this week. He's very pleased with it. I asked a Nobel laureate, Professor Joseph Stiglitz, you're an economist, you will know what a big deal he is. And here's what he said. He said, any deal with Trump isn't worth the paper it's written on. Is Donald Trump taking you for a ride?
Well, we have this agreement in place with the US. I think that is important, particularly the impact on our car industry, for example. It's really important for Jaguar Land Rover that we've got this agreement in place. Clearly, we want to go further in terms of the trading relationship with the US. We are an outward-looking trading nation, so trade is important. And what we've seen really in the course of this week is the new agreement both with the US and the new trade agreement with India. Both of those are things, again, that previous governments had talked about that we're getting on and doing to support our economy.
The partner that's not mentioned there is the EU. And what Stiglitz said is, really, you should be focusing on the EU because that's what's important. It's a bigger partner, and actually it's the one that we should really be doing the deal with. Is there going to be a deal with the EU? And by the way, if there is a deal with the EU, will there be a youth mobility scheme in it?
We have the discussions with the EU about the reset that we've talked about are underway at the moment. So obviously the approach that we've taken both to the India trade agreement and to the US trade agreement is basically just to get on with it, not to do running commentaries about where it's going to get to, but just to get on with it and then to announce an agreement.
So we should see something from the EU, a deal with the EU quite soon?
Well, that's the approach that we've taken, but I'm not going to do a running commentary on what we expect to have in place and when. But we do take, really importantly, the serious issues about getting those trading relationships.
And by the way, last time we spoke about this, I asked you about the youth mobility scheme and you said, no, not never. Your colleagues haven't been quite as categorical recently.
This is not something that we put forward, and we've also always been clear that the important things for the UK is we do not have a return to free movement, and we also always need to make sure that net migration comes down.
So
those are really important.
Isn't it?
So we're, as I just said, I think when I was talking about the trade with India and the US, what I'm not going to do is to do the running commentary because we did exactly the approach that we took. But what I am going to do is be clear. The approach that I will always take, the approach the government will always take, is no return to free movement, and also net migration needs to be coming down. That's what tomorrow is all about. That is the approach we will take across the board.
Home Secretary, thank you for your time this morning.
Thanks, Trevor.